Something of note when you're rebuilding your steering box, Shoebox Ford, is the sector gear assembly. Now these sector gears are held in place or rotate on this pin, and the thing is with these pins is that they're a hardened pin, and then once they're installed they're peened over on the edge, on both edges, and then the sector gear has about 1 million little needle bearings in it runs on, and that's how your sector gear works. So if you're going to replace the sector gear, what you got to do is figure out how to get this pin out of there. So the only way I figured it out was to drill the center of the pin with a center drill. It's not hard in the center, and drill it out as wide as you can get it with a drill before you hit into the hardened area, and then take a die grinder with a tapered burr or a round burr and start working from the center out until you get to the point where there's nothing left of this little lip here, and then you can drive the pin out the other way, and that way you haven't hurt the chamfer in this area. So then when you go to replace it, you get a new sector gear, and comes with the bearings and the pin, a lot better roller bearings, and you got to slide that pin in there. But the question is, how do you retain the pin? So you're really not going to be able to peen this pin over. You don't have the equipment to do that. So from what I can see, the recommended solution is to weld that pin in place, and I think you've got to be very careful welding that pin. You can see here we welded on this pin, and what happened is that the weld just broke away the hardened part of the pin, so it didn't penetrate enough into the pin. So whoever's going to weld this, you've got to get good penetration into that pin and then the housing in the surrounding area, and you got to do it on both sides. You need to be really aware of what's going on there and what you're welding. So I haven't seen any other solution as to how to mash the ends of that pin over. I don't think anybody's got a press strong enough to do that, and welding apparently appears to be the only solution. And then you get the new sector gear. Obviously there are thrust washers here and on the other side, and you've got to fit those thrust washers before you get done with the whole project, because if you have any end play in this gear, it's going to show up as play in the steering, and if you have it too tight, of course, then this is going to bind up. So those hardened washers in there, sometimes they need to be resized depending on what you get and what you have, and that can be a little tricky. I mean, the real way to resize those hardened washers is on a magnetic surface plate and a surface grinder. If you're really lucky, sometimes you can take a piece of emery paper and put them down there and work them back and forth, maybe take a thousandth or two off if you need to, but any sort of big changes you're not going to be able to do by hand. But that's the thing, get it in there so there's no end play, and then you weld that pin in to retain it, and it should be okay as long as you get a good weld.